Welcome, everyone. Welcome to How to Lead Your Firm into the 21st Century. This webcast is brought to you by CPA Practice Advisor Magazine and Canopy. I'm Gail Perry, Editor-in-Chief of CPA Practice Advisor. And before we get started, I want to just quickly explain how CPE for this webcast works. The webcast qualifies for 1 credit of continuing professional education. If you plan to earn CPE for attending this session, you must stay with us for at least 50 minutes. In addition, we will display 4 polling questions during the webcast, and you'll need to answer at least 3 of them, as this is our verification that you're still watching. Later today, you'll receive an email from CPA Practice Advisor containing a link to your CPE certificate, assuming you met the qualifications for certification. Please note that we can give CPE credit for multiple people at the same computer. So if there are others in your office who would like to attend this event on the same screen, please have them join you now, and we'll provide you with an opportunity to send us their information at the end of the event so they too can receive CPE certificates. At any time, you can enter a question in the Ask a Question box provided on your screen, and our speakers will try to get to as many questions as possible during the presentation. Any questions not answered during the live broadcast will be answered by them afterwards via email. If you have any difficulty answering polling questions on your device, you can post your answers to the polling questions in the Ask a Question box, and we'll record the answers there. We are grateful to Canopy today for making this event possible and for enabling us to offer a free CPE credit to our attendees. Today, we are joined by Ryan Lazanis, Will Hill, and Sean Duncan, and I'll have them introduce themselves. And now we are ready to begin.
Awesome. Thank you, Gail. So my name is Sean Duncan. I am the founder of a firm by the name of SMD Consulting and Accounting. We specialize in proactive advisory subscription-based services, but today it has nothing to do with me. I'm just the talking monkey, dancing monkey, MC, whatever we want to call me. It's really about the big brains that are the other 2 guys that are here. And so today, when we're talking about how to lead your firm into the 21st century, if you're going to be ready for the 21st century, you got to make changes. The old way of doing things isn't really going to continue. So that's what we're talking about, is change. Why does change happen? Why do we need change? Why is it hard? Tips and tricks and advice. If you guys follow anything around the world of social media or education in our industry, you already know Will and Ryan. They have an amazing presence. I've learned a lot from just prepping from this. These guys know so much, but also every time I hear them speak or see what they write online, it's phenomenal. I encourage you to follow them. And with that segue, I'm going to let them introduce themselves first, and then we'll jump into the content. So Will, you want to kick us off?
Absolutely. Thank you, Sean, and the folks at Canopy and CPA Practice Advisor. Will Hill, and I've been working with tax and accounting professionals for the better part of a quarter century, which makes me old, and as much as I don't want to admit that, but I like to say I live at the intersection of people and process, and have a blast helping firms just very much in a one-on-one sense navigate through change, transition, and making sure that they're able to hit the goals that they've put in front of themselves.
Awesome. Ryan.
Thank you very much, Sean, and good to see you all here today. Ryan Lazanis from Montreal, Canada. I'm a CPA. I started an accounting firm in 2013 called Zen Accounting. It was one of the earlier online firms in North America when I kicked it off. Had no clue what I was doing at the beginning, took it from scratch, figured some things out along the way, scaled it. It was acquired in 2018. Today, I lead Future Firm to help other firm owners unlock freedom and growth in their business through our online coaching program and community, Future Firm Accelerate, and very excited to be here with you all today.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So change and change management, it's honestly one of my personal favorite topics. I've spoken on it. I've taught at seminars. Actually, I think there's a couple articles Canopy has that I wrote back in early 2024 on this. I love this topic because we CPA nerds kind of tend to be resistant to change, and so do our employees. I want to talk a little bit about that. Well, we assume that you want to make a change, but honestly, you don't have to. I mean, really, you could just keep doing what you're doing. I mean, we have an acronym, same as last year, so Sally can walk in and say, nothing. Guys, what's the consequence or the opportunity? Maybe there's a positive to it, to just keeping everything the same as last year. Will, what do you think? Is there any consequence or downside to sticking around and just staying as it is?
Sure. So to me, that depends on if Sally is out of laziness or intentionality. right? So if you've made a conscious choice and there's some reason behind it, great. If it's laziness or just too busy, there's going to be something that you're susceptible to. I would say this, the consequence is fewer options if you're not changing. The longer you stay the same, the less options you have, because time starts to dwindle where you go. And so if you don't like options, maybe that's a benefit for you of not changing, is that there are fewer to pick from and you won't be as frozen and you'll feel forced, and maybe you enjoy that a little bit more. But yeah, I think the risk is less options, less control. So sometimes we think I'm not changing because I feel out of control. You actually give up control when you refuse to look at possible changes and really truly evaluate them.
What kind of options? I mean, is there anything in particular that jumps to mind, like options that they're missing out on?
So when I think about that, there could be windows of time that are there to say, hey, I want to figure out how to execute better in my outsourced CFO services that I've got. Well, I've got to play with that a little bit, figure out what it looks like for us, iterate, move on. Whereas if I wait until it just becomes a standard expectation, I've lost my iteration window. I've lost the playground time to really figure out what does that look like for me and for my clients? How do I differentiate my value? So to me, that's the biggest thing when it comes to less options, is some of the iteration as you go through.
Cool. Okay. Ryan, anything that jumps to your mind that, like, hey, if we just stay as we are, what's the downside, or what are those opportunities that they have?
I mean, it's always an opportunity cost, right? So that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. But I think this is a good way to kick off this session, is why do we need to change? And the answer is not everybody needs to. If you're happy in the current state and the current situation, then by all means, keep doing what you're doing. But if something's not working, if you're working too many hours, if you're not making the money you want, if the profits aren't coming in, if you're having cash flow problems, then that situation is just going to worsen over time if we don't change, if we don't implement changes. So it comes down to opportunity cost. It comes down to recognizing, are we happy where we are? If we are, then status quo might be fine. And if we're not, then that's when change needs to kick in.
Awesome. And when we're talking about change, guys, we're of course not talking about you have to blow your whole firm up. I have a reputation that I did that years ago, that I just blew the whole thing up and started all over again. That's not what we're talking about. It can be incremental. It can be big. It can be small. Change for the sake of change is stupid. Don't get me wrong. There needs to be intentionality. And I love that, because, Will, I'm going to continue to steal that word over and over again if I can. There has to be a plan and a purpose. And Ryan touches on it perfectly. Are you happy? Are you making the money you want? If not, find a way to change. But we all resist it. Employees resist it. What do you do if it doesn't even work? Like, you have this brilliant idea. I'm going to change my pricing model. I'm going to get new clients. I'm going to niche down, and it doesn't work, because that's what we're all afraid of, is it not working. And then we have a cost or a consequence. Why do you think it fails? And then how do you recommend people adapt to that if it does fail?
I mean, it could be, we have to just figure out, there's hard things that need to be done, and we might not have all the answers. And a lot of what we do in business and in life is just an iterative process. So sometimes we just have to jump in. If we know there's something we need to do to improve in our business, sometimes we just have to jump in, see what things look like, and iterate as we go. So change might fail from the outset because we just don't have the knowledge. We perhaps don't have the support that we need. And I mean, everyone deals with this. Anytime we're trying to implement something new, there's a percentage of things that are just not going to work out. That's just the reality of it.
And obviously, knowledge, we can learn up on stuff. But you mentioned support. What kind of support do you find that will help keep these things from fail? Is it people? Is it tech? What are you meaning with the support?
Well, I'm heavily biased because I have a coaching program and a community, and I think that seeking outside assistance, if there's something you don't know how to do, then why figure it out on your own? It's easier than ever to get information online. It's easier than ever to find someone who's been there, done that. And I think a community is exceptionally helpful as well, whether you're going to in-person events, whether you're, even in the chat, in webinars like this, online communities, like there's a massive amount of support and resources out there online that we can easily tap into. So that's obviously coming from a biased point of view, but that's how I look at things.
Well, and that, honestly, that matches us, right? I mean, how many clients are out there trying to figure out how to do their own books or file their own tax returns and are like, hey, just call a professional. It makes sense. Yeah, there's pros that are out there in events for sure. I'm a huge fan of conferences and events. There's a lot of, not only can you learn, but you can build a community of friends and individuals. Will, what do you think? Why do you think these changes fail? And when they do, what do we do about that?
I would say this, we've made our whole brand of this profession around getting it right, accurate. Mm-hmm. Right? You go to every firm's website, we get it right. Interestingly enough, most of your clients already have an old accounting relationship and someone did something wrong. So there's some false advertising out there somewhere. But we are so obsessed with being right and accurate that oftentimes one of two things happens. One, we freeze when it comes to change because we don't know everything. So we've got to become more comfortable with not knowing everything. That has to be okay. Please know the tax code, but changes with people and behavior, this is a different beast, right? We're going to learn things along the way. You're not going to know it all. I think the other thing is when we get hesitant, it's like my son when he plays basketball, and he sees an opponent that looks bigger and better. In their mind, they go, oh, we're here to play. I don't know that we can win. And you're like, hey, well, you can't have that attitude or you're not going to give it your full effort. And then when they don't give it their full effort, they turn around and go, see, we didn't win. And you're like, but you didn't give it your full effort. Mm-hmm. And we do that in change. When we're nervous about the failure point, we kind of halfway mail it in and go, well, I'm going to try this piece, but I'm going to hold a lot back because I'm not sure it's going to work. And I'm scared of it working, if we're honest with ourselves, because it's going to mean a new reality that we're not comfortable and familiar with. And all of a sudden it starts to fall apart and we go, see, it's not going to work. I'm going to pull the plug. Nothing ever works for us in this firm. That won't work for us. Did we really actually get in there, or do we produce a self-fulfilling prophecy?
I think Will hit the nail on the head here. Is like, it comes down to mindset. A big part of this is, why does change fail? Well, it starts with mindset. And if we don't believe in it, that's usually what's going to be holding us back. And I think we've been trained as accountants, as CPAs, to be, skeptical, which drives us to be conservative. We're over calculating. I think kind of Will alluded to that, and that prevents us from just jumping in sometimes.
Yeah, paralysis by analysis, right? I mean, it's a self-sabotage we don't even realize we're doing sometimes, is that we just get locked up. That is for sure holds us all back, because we all want to get it perfect. We're expected to get it perfect all the time. When I'm coaching on advisory stuff, clients are asking all that, well, how do I know I'm giving the right information? Do you know what a deduction is? Well, yeah, tell them. But how do I know that I'm not missing something? Do you have years of experience and training? Do you have resources? It's just like we give these excuses to not take a shot. But, and Will said this at the beginning, kind of going to get forced on you. There's a lot of winds changing in our industry right now that if you're not prepared to shift or adapt, we're not joking when we say a few years from now, you might not even be in business. And that's a terrifying prospect too. Since we're talking about change and Gail, heads up, we're going to do a poll question in a second after this next question. What are one or two things that you feel like in the next 12 to 24 months, firm owners must be prepared to address, if they have not already, to get themselves ready, some change, big or small? I don't care if it's big or small, but just something like, just let's start this off with, like, guys, keep this in your mind and start thinking about it as we talk about the rest of the topics. Will, why don't you kick me off? Any ideas?
So successful change comes from direct, proper alignment. It starts with, what are the goals of the firm owner, right? And Ryan mentioned it. Are you happy? Are you getting the cash flow you want? All those things. Are you funding retirement the way you want to see it funded? It starts with, what are those goals? Can I actually name them besides, well, I just want to run a good business? Thanks. That's not measurable. Appreciate it. So I step down from there and to say, now, what's the firm's mission? And that needs to be aligned. And then I want to align from the firm mission and my goals down into my commercial strategy. Because if we can't charge clients in the right way and engage services that are correct to service those. The rest of the tech and everything else doesn't matter. And then I come down and say, what are my operational tactics? So my advice to you is the minute you see a shiny new tech piece and you're like, ooh, let's charge after that. Ask yourself, how does this support the commercial strategy? If it doesn't, do you need to revisit your commercial strategy, or do you need to revisit what you think is shiny? So I'll say alignment.
Yeah, that's mission driven. I love that. Ryan, any thoughts on that before we go to poll question?
I think I think Will's response is fantastic. I think it all starts with being clear about where you want to end up concretely. How much money you want to make, how many hours you want to work, what do you want to be doing with your time, and then everything reverse engineers from there. If we want to talk a little bit more tactically about like some of the things that we need to have on the horizon, that like prepare for the future in the next 12 to 24 months, I don't think we could have this discussion without talking about AI. I know we've heard this, like we're inundated with this kind of stuff, but and I'm sure we'll touch on this a little bit later, but I think like the rate of acceleration when it comes to AI is scary almost. So yeah, I'm sure we'll touch on that later though.
For sure. Yeah, it's terrifying and exciting, and it's overwhelming. No doubt. We definitely will be talking tech here in a sec. But I'm going to go ahead and give this to the voice above us all, the great and powerful Gail Perry will kick off the first survey for us.
All right. This is our first polling question. When your firm considers a major change, what's the biggest obstacle before you even start? And your answer options are not enough time or resources, fear of disrupting what's working, lack of team buy-in, unclear goals or priorities, or something else. Other. Other is always the ubiquitous answer. Okay, so you can post your answers. If you are having trouble posting them on the screen, you can post your answers in the Ask a Question box, and we'll record them there. And then in a minute, we'll share the results as these are coming in.
Are we taking that?
And obviously, other could be anything and everything under the sun that you guys want, but this is right. Awesome. I love the real time things. And by the way, if you were dozing off in the background, this is how you get your CPE. Now is the time to act. Buy now.
Right. And just also while we're chatting here, while the answers are coming in, on your screen in the Ask a Question box, there's a thing that says total answered questions at the bottom. That has nothing to do with these CPE questions. So that's just there to confuse you.
Yeah, these are pretty on point. Awesome. Okay, we'll give it a few more seconds, guys. We've got thousands and thousands of respondents all across the globe. Millions upon millions of you here. Cool. All right. So I'm seeing the top answer is not enough time or resources. I mean, come on, you guys. You're only working 20 hours a week, right? I mean, we all have infinite. I get you. I get you. And fear of disrupting what's working. Absolutely. These are very, very key. Guys, any thoughts on that before we jump into the next section?
I think
it seems pretty self-evident.
As predicted, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, Ryan did a great job with his segue. We're going to talk a little bit about tech. Now, obviously, when a lot of people talk about change, they want to talk about AI, and they think, I'm going to make change. I'm going to have to change my practice software. I have to change my tax tool. Yeah, that is absolutely one version of change. Since we want to talk about tech and we want to talk about AI, what do you guys feel is the best way to identify what type of tech should be implemented and why? Like, how do you go about choosing the right thing to make a choice? Because there's a bajillion different choices out there. Ryan, you want to start us off with that one?
It starts with solving a problem. What's the problem that we have in the business? Rather than, there's a lot of great marketing out there for tech, right? Like these features and bells and whistles, and we get very distracted. We get easily sidetracked. Will talked about this being a shiny object, and truthfully, like a lot of this stuff is shiny objects. Not saying it's not helpful, but is that where you should be placing your time and energy? So it starts with, what is the inefficiency I'm having right now? What is the opportunity I have perhaps at my disposal? What is the problem I'm facing or the pain that I'm facing in the business? Can we implement a process that's going to fix that? And then can we implement technology that's going to streamline it further? So that's kind of how I look at tech. It's like almost like I don't look at it as the thing to put in place first. It's almost the thing to put in place last.
Because it's solving that problem, whatever that problem you've identified is. So if you're dealing with pain, and we all know if you're running a practice, it is the hardest thinking thing ever, short of parenting, because I think that's kind of the same thing. There's this infinite number of challenges that we have to face. When you have 7 different pains, Will, how do you prioritize that? How do you come up with, I can't implement 7 new pieces of tech to solve this. How do you go about figuring that out?
Yeah. Ironically, I often tell the firms I'm coaching to, especially during tax season, to document what I call the paper of pain. And anytime something hurts, we write it down. We can't solve it right now in the moment, but we have to kind of balance against one another. I think we also have to create transparency with our teams when they come and say, hey, this stinks over here. We got to fix this. Well, why aren't you addressing what matters to me? We're often very closed doored when it comes to our rationale for why we're picking what change. I would just encourage folks to be more transparent. Hey, here's the change. Here's who it impacts. Here's the opportunity, maybe because it could be, as Ryan mentioned, something we're not taking advantage of. And here's the impact that solving the pain will have. And it's not just solving the pain. We need to understand it. And I think when we talk about team buy-in, when they understand more about why we're doing what we're doing, even if I'm not in the department that's touched, but my buddy across the hallway is, or across the street, whatever, if we're remote, then I'm more understanding about, hey, they're busier. They've got something on their plate for the next 3 weeks that's really going to drown them down. How do I help as a teammate and pull through? So I would encourage people to be really transparent and think about just balancing, when does it have to be done? What's the kind of lift? What's the kind of impact? We could get really formulaic with it, but it's also a bit of a gut check through there. So.
And when you're making these choices, Ryan, I'm curious on your thoughts on piggybacking on that. Is it the owner's responsibility to identify what tech or change needs to be done? Because when he's talking about guy across the street has this problem, but I have this problem, who makes the decision? Like, how do you go about making that decision to figure out which tech is going to be the most impactful?
Depends on the size of the firm and who's in charge of making that decision. I mean, at a smaller firm, then probably it would be the firm owner. At a certain point in time, I always see firm owners get bogged down with process, with technology, when that's not really what they're really good at. They could be really good at drumming up business or strategy or business development or dealing with high-level clients, and then they get bogged down in process and tech. When at a certain point in time, there should be someone that leads operations at the firm. You don't even have to be super big for that to happen. You can have some fractional help and stuff like that. But I would prefer to delegate that to someone that is really good with operations, with systems, with process. That's who I'd prefer to delegate that to.
Cool. And just a perspective on that from my angle is I'm a 10 or 11 person firm. I'm a dinky little boutique firm on purpose because I don't want to take over the universe. My firm has evolved to where my staff tells me when they want the tech change because they're in the trenches. I, for years, would say, this is the best of breed. I'd go to all the conferences, I'd do the interviews, and I'd throw the lightning bolt down and say, this is what we're doing. Mm-hmm. I found that didn't work. Now, when they're telling me, in fact, Canopy, our sponsor, my team told me we're changing our entire practice management software because they think it's better. And I'm like, oh, that's a lot of work because I was resistant to change. All the poll questions, right? And they were the champions. And it was really, really interesting to see that shift accidentally happen because they came to me and said, this is going to make our lives better. And so it's funny as I was the same thing. I'm telling you what to do as the owner. And the next thing you know, it shifted and evolved because they know better. As you're putting these tools in, I think you mentioned that you like to do a pilot program. Is that how you approach tech? Do you do a sample data? Do we just make the change? How do you go about bringing these tech changes in?
So some have the ability to test out, right? So things on the accounting and bookkeeping side, we can test them client by client, kind of get a gauge and see. Others, firm management system, you don't really have a whole lot of a pilot, right? You can play around and maybe run parallel for a little bit, but at some point you got to jump in with both feet and see what happens. So, but anything where you do have a pilot test, I would just encourage firms to have two metrics, right? So let's say that we're looking at a new tool around tax return delivery. And I said, hey, we're going to be able to save 15 minutes per return with this tool. So what if we save 12? Is that worth it? Is that good enough? How do you make that decision in that moment? And so I would encourage you to have two metrics. One is, what's our goal? And then the second is, what's our minimum threshold to make the rest of the pain worth the change, right? So say, hey, our goal is 15 minutes, but as long as we're saving 8 minutes per, we're good. And if it comes out at 7, we're axing the whole thing. And I'm making that decision objectively instead of emotionally in the moment, and putting some clear markers out there. So I think that's one of the areas where just putting in two sets of metrics as opposed to the historical one gives you a little more clarity about, if we are able to pilot it, are we able to move forward?
Yeah. Is the juice worth a squeeze? Yeah. I love that, because you have a line in the sand and you can say, look, sorry, because there's a lot of cool stuff out there, but it's going to cost too much money and too much time. That's because there's always a curveball. You can get in there and there's going to be a curveball that's going to throw it off, the best expectations. It doesn't mean it was a failure. It's just a challenge. And by the way, audience, when you watch the guys' faces, we did prep and I had canned questions, but I keep changing it. So if they look startled every time I ask a question, that's why, because I'm off the cuff a little too much. And speaking of off the cuff, we teased about AI, but I'm going to twist this a bit. Since there's so many AI related tools out there, some of them are native to the software that you're already using, and some of them you have to go buy and use. Is there any recommendation each of you guys have of, hey, here's one, doesn't have to be the universe, one AI tool and a trick that will help, you've seen help a lot of the practices out there. Any recommendations? Will, I'll let you kick this off. And this way Ryan can think and brainstorm, because I just caught you off guard. What tool have you said that better? It's super awesome?
I'm going to refuse to name one particular tool. I'll go back to what Ryan said.
You got to name one, Will. You got to do it. You got to name
Dude,
one.
I'm going to delete you off the screen. Hang on.
All right. So you've got to know what problem you're solving, because my favorite AI tool might be completely irrelevant that's there. I'll say this. I've had a number of my clients be really impressed with what BlueJay's been able to do for them from an AI tool perspective. And the reason it's been impressive is, one, because people's familiarity with like a ChatGPT style of tool, it's an easy transition into that because it's an interactive dialogue-based kind of thing going on. Two, they can really get specific with how they're going to offload process to someone less technical and free up some owner time with crafting responses on notices, and then just kick in for review, or really driving in and saying, man, our juniors have got to be able to research better and feel more supported, right? So that's one that I've just had a few clients say just some marvelous things about in terms of what it's done, and they've been able to solve specific pain point problems. So
love that. That's awesome. Ryan, what are your thoughts?
I think we have a duty right now to develop muscle memory in terms of how we engage with these generative AI tools like ChatGPT or Gemini. I think we have to be like a power user of at least one of those types of tools that we can chat with. I personally use ChatGPT. I'm using it every single day, multiple times a day, and I'm just getting better and better at how I prompt. I think like we have to understand how to prompt. It's just like when I first used the internet years ago, it's like, how do I search? What words do I use? And then it became second nature. And I think we have to develop that kind of reflex about how does it become second nature in terms of interacting with these tools and prompting these tools to give us the output that we need. It's not the easiest thing to get right. So I think we just have a duty to practice that on a daily basis, truthfully. But in terms of my favorite app, so I've actually cloned my voice and my avatar. So my podcast, Future Firm Accounting Podcast, if you listen to it, sounds just like this voice. It's a voice clone. I think that's pretty neat. And I cloned my avatar, so you can see the background here and the video. It looks almost exactly like this. Back in the spring, I suffered a pretty bad concussion. And I had to deliver a presentation, and I committed to the presentation. There's hundreds of people that were showing up, and I didn't cancel the presentation, but I had my avatar and my voice clone deliver it on my behalf, which is pretty wild. So that's on YouTube. Awesome. You can search that up. Yeah. Okay. And I did the first 2 minutes of that presentation. You can see I was in really bad shape. I barely was able to make it live through the 2 minutes. But this is what the technology can do nowadays. It's like prime time, almost prime time ready for like cloning yourself. So that's why it's moving super fast. I'm excited about it, but also quite scared as well.
That's good. So you would have never even had that option had you not been tinkering before. So you never even knew that to be a use case. It's just you started building a skill and went, oh my gosh, I need this to save. That's unbelievable. That is super cool. I've never heard that story before. All right, we're going to go ahead and poll question. Man, I could talk about tech for hours, and I have been known to do so, and the future of the industry. But we're going to keep this moving because I have some other topics I want us to do. But Gail, if you want to hit us with the second question, we'll do that.
I certainly do. But I also want to know, are we looking at the real Ryan, or is this Ryan's avatar?
But that's what people say now. Ever since then, like even when I'm responding to emails, they're like, sometimes people will get mad. Like, this isn't you. You responded too quickly. And I'm like, no, it really is me.
This is the dreamy real Ryan.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, here's your second polling question. When adopting new technology, where does your firm get stuck most often? And the possible answers are communicating pricing changes to clients, charging for value instead of time. In other words, not charging by the hour, but charging what it's worth, packaging services effectively, ensuring profitability, or other.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and spill the beans here. And now that I see this, I think the poll question got a boo-boo because this is pricing questions and the header's wrong. Answer the question anyways. We're getting to pricing
anyway. This is a pricing question, even though we haven't been talking about that. So
we're back to
it's all right. We're keeping you on your toes here.
I told you, I'm curveball king here, guys. If you've ever seen me on Gail's Ensuring Success, you know I'll screw things up. Okay, charging for value instead of time. Okay, love this. Communicating pricing changes. Yeah, this is pricing is an art. And again, I know the question doesn't relate to the answers. So extrapolate your best guess at what our real question was. Either way, you're getting CPE credit. Charging for value instead of time is so hard because we're people pleasers. We want to help people, and we have a bad way of figuring out how are we going to help people and charge the appropriate amount of time or a value without measuring time. And again, we like our empirical data. Yeah.
Sean, I actually didn't have a problem with the way this question was, simply because I get into a lot of conversations with firm owners where we talk about, hey, I've made a lot of technology change. How does that affect what I'm doing for pricing? Because I've got different overhead. I've got different SaaS expenses that have kicked in now. And how do I really measure the return of a new tool that I've got? Is it adding more value that I should pass along, or is it replacing labor costs? How do I measure that? How do I decide what to do with potential efficiency gains? When do I decide to do that in the middle? So I don't know if the question was that far off base.
Okay, I told you Will and Ryan were smarter than I am. We knew that. That's an awesome point because, again, our cost structure and it disrupts the KPIs that we used to know, but that's part of the purpose. We're disrupting to create a better efficiency and a value. And like you said, does it save 8 minutes or 12? That will still come back to the solution. Yeah, it's an ever-evolving thing for sure. Awesome. Well, since we sort of segued into pricing, let's change gears. Let's talk about pricing a little bit. We have these conversations all the time at the conferences. How many seminars and webinars talk about pricing and value pricing and subscription pricing? I'm going to just have each one of you answer a different question so we're not always doing the two-person thing because I want to speed this up a little bit because I got a lot of questions for you guys. So Ryan, what are some simple ways a firm can get started and change their pricing and not just blow the whole world up? Like, how do you go about helping clients change their pricing model and get to more value pricing or just being more profitable overall?
I think the first step that I do is, and I'm overly simplifying here because we could turn this into like a 2-hour session.
Webinar, yeah.
But the first thing, I'm a big proponent of 3-tiered pricing: gold, silver, bronze. And the reason is because most people are like, what we're trying to do with pricing is oftentimes we're trying to increase the price. And one of the easiest tactics to increase the price, in my opinion, is to offer more premium options, because usually we're shortchanging ourselves. When we give one option, we're scared of perhaps scaring off that client, and we undercut ourselves. So by adding a second and a third option on top, we give ourselves the opportunity to move the price upstream relatively easily. There's more to it than that, but the first step I do is let's create some packages that have high perceived value in the eyes of the client. Let's do not just one option, let's do 3 options. That is the first step for me, is creating an offer that is valuable, not just one offer, 3 offers: gold, silver, bronze.
Awesome. Will, your thoughts on hourly, subscription-based value pricing? How do you feel is the best way? Again, we're talking about moving into the 21st century. Where should we be going? Should we still be holding on to hourly? Should we all be doing fixed fee? What's your theory or thoughts on pricing in general conceptually? What should we be approaching the next century with?
Yeah. Pricing should never be a surprise for the client. Right. So that's where I sit first and foremost. And yeah, the transition's hard sometimes, but usually because it's in our own minds. I don't know a client that's like, hey, why don't we do business together? And you kind of randomly decide what this is going to cost me and tell me after we're all done and I'm on the hook. That sounds like a great proposition. No one wants to hold on to that. Yeah. So, known price, and the price should just be framed around the relationships. When I heard Ryan give his answer, my first thought was, you're not asking the client to choose price. You're asking the client to choose scope. And I think our emphasis really needs to be on what's the scope of services. And some of the top end, the scope might be accessibility. So it might be harder to kind of explain or define, but it is, and I do that with some of my firms, like, hey, you can reach out to me whenever. Doesn't mean I'm always going to answer at midnight when you call, because first of all, why are you doing that? No one's going to die. But you're going to have accessibility, and you're going to have the prime spot of that accessibility. And when we start thinking about scope, it allows us to reflect back into capacity a little bit more directly as well and say, ooh, do I want to offer them the top tier? I've only got 50 slots that it makes sense for us to give unlimited capacity to, because that's how much we can manage based on where we see the usage of that level of scope go. So we can do a little bit more when we manage through scope, and we kind of let the price fall out from there. I don't know if that's an anti-answer to your pricing question.
No, I love it, because, well, I mean, hourly rate pricing too also is like, well, shucks, guys, I don't know. This is going to take 10 hours, maybe 50. Golly, I hope it's not 50. The client knows you hope it's 50. That's how you make money. And so there's not a symbiotic relationship there. But I love the scope concept because it's about what value you can bring, and you're having that conversation. But Ryan, how do we do this without freaking out the client, making them lose trust? How do we bring this new model? Because if you've been doing it this way for 20 years and you're about to pivot, how do you facilitate that transition?
I think it's 2 steps. One, it's creating packages, again, that have high perceived value in the eye of the client. It's like, what are the, not just listing, I do bookkeeping, I do tax, but there's other things that you do throughout the year that have value that we're usually not listing in our offer. For instance, like what Will said, is like a level of access to the partner or the owner in the firm. That has a lot of value. And usually we're giving like unlimited access. Send me as many emails you want, call me as often as you want, and we're giving it at the bottom price. That should be at the gold, more premium price. So we have to kind of flesh out our value a little bit better in our packages. And then we have to frame the communication around why this makes sense for the client, and not saying, well, we're rolling out these new packages and it's going to take us, 40 more hours than usual, and that's why the price went up. Instead, we should be saying, well, we rolled out these new packages, and the result that we're going to get for you is we're going to give you better peace of mind. We're going to help you improve your profits, and we're going to decrease your tax bill. And that's why the price is reflected as such. There's an ROI here. So we have to change flesh out our offer a little bit better and reframe how we communicate that to the client. Not in terms of like, we do this checklist of things for you, but here's the overall result we're going to be helping you with.
And the more clearly you define that, like this is what we're going to do, you start to block off and create guardrails from scope creep, right? This is how we're going to do this. And if something falls out of that, you can then offer that next service and next fee to create. And look, it's an art. None of this is perfect, but you start to create some parameters or guardrails. Now, out of respect for everybody's time, I know that we're running out of time a little bit. I want to go ahead and hit the next poll question because I have a few more things I definitely want to tackle. We could have done 2 hours just on pricing. I know that was lightning speed through that, but let's hit the next poll question. We'll see what it is because I'm interested too now, and we'll go from there.
Okay, here's poll question number 3. What's your firm's biggest challenge when updating or changing pricing? And the answer options are, this is pricing again.
Yep, it's exactly the same answer. So we'll go super fast on this one because you guys, you can click fast so you can get your credit. I'll move on. So go. Come on.
Okay. Oh, actually, what happened? I can't. It's me. I copied the answers wrong. Anyway. Okay.
It happens. It's okay. Quick show of hands. Did anybody care that much, or did you just want to get your CPE? Right. I want to hear more from Ryan and Will, anyways. So
we could just say that the answer options are red, blue, green, and yellow. But anyway,
exactly.
Our answer options are your biggest challenge when updating or changing pricing. The answers are communicating pricing changes to clients, charging for value instead of time, packaging services effectively, ensuring profitability, or other. And feel free to not answer the same one you chose last time. It can be whatever you want.
Cool. Sorry for that, guys, but at least, and I've got pages of notes here, guys. Already. Like, it's funny. It's like we prepped, and then they're saying new things. And I've got some homework to do myself. Obviously, as we get going with change, and you guys said this a little bit earlier, it's getting the team on board. It's getting that buy-in. What tips and tricks do you have for getting the team to get on the same page with you? Because if maybe you are saying this is what we're going to do, Will, thoughts? How do you get the team on the same page so that we can make it a successful change and not just something that flames out?
Good news. I got a 2-hour webinar on this exact topic. Here we go. So first is, I mentioned transparency before. We need transparency to get them on the same page. The second thing is that your team is more committed to change when they're a part of the change process. You set the vision. Hey, let's trim down throughput time on our tax returns by 2 days. Go. That's my vision. Let me unleash the team on how we're going to get there. Or I've made a change to a software. Let me unleash the team on how we're going to set it up, what the configuration might look like. So I want to involve the team in the change so they're buying to change. Last thing, passive resistance. When I see it, I have to deal with it. When I see it, I have to deal with it. Most of the time, passive resistance to change comes from somebody having placed what they believe their personal value to be onto the tasks that they execute through their day. And so when a new change comes into play, the tasks that they do or where they click in a program are going to shift and move. And subconsciously, they're going, oh no, I'm in a danger spot here. I'm at risk because they've hitched their value to the wrong thing. So when we see that, we've got to have a value conversation. Hey, Sean, I know you're great at clicking all these buttons. Here's where I think your real value is to our business. This change is going to help you accelerate and accentuate that value for our customers. Let's go get them, right? So we have to, it's more complicated than that, but we've got to really make sure that the value is understood by the team and not misplaced. That's where I think a lot of passive resistance comes from.
So that's some amazing leadership stuff too, because again, we have a tendency just to duck our heads back too. We don't want to have conflict. It's not conflict. It's encouragement. It's moving everybody forward together. So Ryan, let me fly up 30,000 foot. So he's talking about individuals, and obviously there will be people that will sabotage. How do we get the culture? How do we have the company, like everybody, there's a buy-in? Is there a trick or an idea or a way to approach to create a culture of change in a firm?
I think if we do it as a group, we sometimes run things as an experiment and have everybody share in on that experiment. That could help. And one example that comes to mind, just to bring it back to the AI side of things, is when we saw that this was trending heavily and we can see the direction that AI is going in, it's clear that we need to integrate this into our daily lives, at least in the workplace. And, I just told the team one day, it's like, okay, like going forward, we have to use AI on a daily basis. And what we're going to do on our weekly meetings is we're all going to go around and share the best thing that we used AI for this particular week. And that's how, that we all learned from each other that way. And then we all leveled up. So we all didn't really know what to do. We all didn't really know how to use it. And we just got together as a group and said, look, use this on a daily basis now. We all are learning. But every week, my expectation is that everyone's going to go around and they're going to say, oh, I used it for this. And it worked well in this way. It didn't work well in that way. And that's how we learned. So I think sometimes we just got to throw ourselves into it as a group and experiment.
What I love hidden in that is it puts the staff in a position of expertise that they can be the teacher to everybody else. And I mean, who doesn't like to look like they're an expert? That is some super empowerment stuff too, because then there's a buy-in because they're the ones that are now teaching everybody. And I love that. I am absolutely stealing it, Ryan. That is on my notes.
Go for it.
Okay, before I get to my last real question, I want to make sure we hit this last poll question. So we can pop off this fourth poll question and then we'll get to the landing.
Okay, here we go. Number 4. How does your team typically respond to change? And your answer options are energized and curious, hesitant but willing, resistant until results show, overwhelmed or skeptical, or it depends on the change. And you have to pick one because we didn't give you an other option on this one.
Yeah. And of course, every employee is different, but generally, how does your firm respond?
And if you don't have a team, if it's just you, then it's how do you respond?
And I'm always curious, obviously, when you're doing a webinar, there's a lot of opportunity to learn about change and change management and technology and things like that. But if you're not attending events like live conferences, I encourage you because you can start to meet other people and steal their ideas too. And it kind of forces you to be energized and curious in those moments. Hesitant but willing. Okay. So the leader is currently hesitant but willing, which is positive. I'm glad you guys are willing to keep making this change. Depends on the change. Awesome. And I'm assuming you guys can see these answers as they're moving around.
Yeah, they're awesome. Up on the screen.
Fellas, any thoughts on that before we work on sticking the landing and asking the last final questions?
I mean, we need people that are open to change. We can't people need to come along with the ride, come along for the ride. We can't force people to do it. And some people are just incredibly resistant. And then it's a question of whether they're the right person for the company and the culture or not. So that's why when we're going through our recruitment process, one of the things that we look for is people that are going to embrace change.
Yeah, that's a core value. Yeah, Will.
We throw in a movie quote from Remember the Titans: "Attitude reflects leadership, Captain." And if you are going, oh, we got to do this again, no wonder no one wants to come along and be energized by the change, right? So I'm not saying you're going to grab everybody with a positive attitude, but you better start there.
Hey, Will, I love that. I think we ought to go forward doing a webinar where it's all movie quotes and we try and relate those to the accounting profession.
Oh man, I'll bury you guys in Star Wars and Avengers stuff.
For sure.
But actually, what is it? Einstein said the measure of intelligence is the ability to change. So I don't know. We're going quote wise. Just keep in mind, you're smarter if you change. It's an evolution thing. So obviously, audience, there are so many questions and so many possibilities. This could have been a workshop. We're trying to hit some high points. But what I do want to do is make sure there's at least something that you can wrap your arms around as a takeaway. So both of you guys, I'm going to ask you something actionable. Everybody listening, big or small firm, individual, whatever it is, what's a piece of advice, a tip, a strategy to help them move into the 21st century? Where would you say they start after they disconnect, after this is over with, just to get themselves ready for the next century? I'll go Ryan on this one.
All right. I was waiting for a smart answer.
Yeah, I know. But, I was already thinking of my own answer. I don't know what it is.
I think it goes back to the beginning of this conversation. It's like, okay, let's reverse engineer our plan to figure out like what our priority is right now, what project we need to work on that's really going to move the needle in terms of like increasing profits, decreasing time spent, something along those lines. And then to just figure out, like, sometimes we get overwhelmed about like, oh, we got to reprice our client base, or we got to implement this huge piece of technology, and then that can cause some paralysis. But if you just figure out the next little baby step, that will give you some momentum in making that change. Mm-hmm. So I think that would probably be my actionable tip, if you can call it that, is like just figure out the next little baby step that you need to make in the project that's going to move the needle.
You're going to build muscle memory. You're going to have that repetition you see in a success, and it builds on it. Yeah, I love that. Will, what would you think? What's the kind of thing you want to suggest?
Yeah, I agree with Ryan that you have to go back to where we started the conversation. What's your goal? What's the outcome that you're chasing? And if you can't document that for yourself, you're going to chase other people's outcomes instead of yours, and you're going to be frustrated with the amount of change and not knowing if it's successful because you can't measure it against your outcome. You're measuring against someone else's desired outcome. And after you've got that documented, hey, what's in the way? Just what's in the way? And it could be something you're doing that's in the way. It could be something you're missing that's in the way. Just what's in the way? And then attack one thing, right? You're not trying to boil the ocean. You're trying to, revenue's in the way. We got to change prices. Okay. Sorry. Next. Wow, that was
very
great.
Emotional about this stuff.
Yeah, I choked up. Okay, great. Next new client gets the new price. Simple step, right?
Yeah.
Just keep it simple, but directional to the change, directional to the purpose that you're trying to achieve.
I love that, because again, we have this bad habit of saying we're going to reinvent, and it doesn't have to be that. I actually will. I wasn't intending to throw this in there, but I'm thinking back to the first poll question where you guys said you don't have time or resources. I strongly recommend what I've trademarked as the work on the business day, at least once a quarter. Clear a day, disappear from your office and your family, be the owner of the company in that moment. If your client called you and said, I need you right now and I have an emergency, you would clear your calendar to focus on that client. You wouldn't take phone calls. You wouldn't do emails. You would lock in to help your client. You are your own most important client. Go help yourself. Clear the day. And so all this stuff that we're talking about and brainstorming and ideas, you probably have notes, and I know I've got a bunch. Clear the time, make the time. Look, it's one day a quarter. You can pull that off. I'm sure you can. Just give yourself a shot to be an owner and start working on the business instead of in the business. And I think that will make a huge, huge difference for you. So Gail, I'm going to let you land this plane. I have more questions and answers because actually you guys gave me some more ideas, but we want to respect your time for the CPE. Gail, when you want to bring us home?
I'm going to bring you guys home. First of all, thank all three of you for an incredibly excellent presentation. I would have liked more movie quotes, but we're going to work on that for the future. We hope all of you enjoyed this webinar, and we want to thank you for spending your time with us today. You can find all of our upcoming webinars at cpapracticeadvisor.com/webinars. We'd like to thank Canopy for making this event possible and enabling us to offer a free CPE credit to each attendee. And as a reminder, you'll receive your CPE certificate in your email inbox later this afternoon. If you have any questions about CPE, my email address is going to be in that message. It's gperry, GPERRY, at cpapracticeadvisor.com. And also, if you had extra people attending at the same computer with you, and if they need CPE credit, just shoot their name and email address over to me at that gperry at cpapracticeadvisor.com, and we'll make sure that happens. We're going to post a post-event survey on screen, and we'd like you to take a moment just to fill out a handful of questions to tell us how you think we're doing so we can continue to improve our webinar series. And I think that's it. Thank you, everyone. And our audio is going to end now.